Hello, Demi. Long time no see.
You
What's
caught
going
me.
on here?
It's Burns night. Cheers. It's Burns
Cheers.
night tonight.
All right. It's 9 a.m., 9:01 here in Brooklyn,
Well,
and 2 p.m.
it's in the afternoon here, so I'm celebrating Burns night for the next 12 hours.
Please tell what's going on.
A very British thing. You know how the English, I made a couple of videos about how there's some friction between the Scots and the English. But the English were, when it comes to parties, they're very forgiving. So there'll be Burns Night, which is a Scottish holiday, being celebrated all over England. And I'm one of the guys. I have to tell everyone there's quite a lot of soda in this, so don't worry.
All right. We won't be worried. That's okay. I think,
right.
You know what? I think we do what internet was originally intended to created for. We kind of take over the world with the taking it away from the mass media that is distorting whatever we still hold dear.
I just want to tell you, my doggy has come in to join the party.
Yeah, and we talk about whatever we want, and we dress whichever way we consider decent, and because a lot of people, you have no idea how many people support my wearing this MAGA cap, and how many people quietly advise me to take it off because Trump is no more, Trump is not serious, Trump is winning every poll, Donald Trump is still winning every poll that's conducted here. He's over Biden like 10-15%.
Well, but then an arthritic goat would be over Biden by 10 or 15%.
Oh yeah, but not with. But in the next sentence, usually we say, "But you can. How can you trust those polls?"
Yeah.
Who's running those polls? Students.
But it is true. They can be completely skewed, can't they?
Are the British poll worshippers like the Americans are?
Well, look, in the previous election, I mean the 2019 election, all the polls said that the Labour Party were going to trounce the Conservatives.
Yeah.
Right.
Didn't happen.
It did not. Not only did it not happen, it happened spectacularly not. So it just and then after that the pollsters said, "Oh, we made some mistakes, so we'll get it better next time." Yeah.
Tell me, speaking of poetry and Robert Burns, what part does poetry play in British life?
Now that is a good question, because speaking as
I'm famous for them.
Yeah, yes.
Like half of the world.
I want to assure the viewers that we did not rehearse this before. But if we had, we couldn't have come up with a better entree, could we? As an English teacher, I wish there were more poetry, and occasionally I do bring poetry in to my own videos as illustrations. Over Christmas, I read quite a lot of poetry. Now, the problem with poetry is that it requires a cultural framework. So you know what the references are. And that cultural framework is breaking down here in Britain. So I may make a reference to Robert Burns to somebody, and they won't know who I'm talking about because they're from Nigeria or whatever. They can't help being from Nigeria. I don't blame them, but it means that there are shorthand routes of conversation that are steadily dwindling because of this multicultural idea. And that's why I keep saying that the British educational system is not living up to what it should be doing, which is less multiculturalism and more English or British culture. So that will give us all a way of connecting with each other. Look, if I say I'm talking about a young woman, and I say to her, well, she's a bit of a Cinderella. You know what I'm talking about?
That's
if
right.
I say that somebody, a nasty woman I know, she's a bit of a goneril, one of King Lear's daughters, half the country, 3/4 of it, won't know what I'm talking about. And that reduces the shortcuts we can use to communicate with each other. So yeah, the place of poetry probably, I'd say, is being taken by pop songs. So when I say the times they are changing, everybody knows that's Bob Dylan, everybody knows that wail, and that's where the culture has moved to, and a bit less poetry of the classical sort.
Yeah.
But that is actually forming some sort of the problem is, it used to be that the lyrics of pop songs, like stuff like Aerosmith and Dylan and the Beatles, they had recognizable lyrics, and you could use them to talk about. But like, what's that one? There's a song called WAP. No, you don't know it. It's
I know this song. Yeah,
you
that's an
can't
American
really.
song.
Yeah. It makes no sense except for some words which I would prefer not to relay on YouTube. So there is no reference there. You can't give a reference, so that's dwindling as well. Is that the long answer?
No, it's a perfect answer, and I would like to respond to that, because a role of poetry in Russia was absolutely, in Soviet Union was huge, because it pulled the strings of, I still sometimes surprise my wife and myself when we drive through, say, we drive through New York City, and I see all those skyscrapers, and I suddenly the lines from Pushkin comes up, dedicated to St. Petersburg in Eugene Onegin's his famous poem.
Yeah.
And it's just that it's somewhere in the psyche, somewhere it's rubbed into the the gray matter of my brain, or whatever it is I have for this. But it was huge, and culturally, it kind of I don't know where it advanced the society, because not everybody was taking it too close to heart. For this, we had so-called intelligentsia. But currently, there's an interesting kind of sorting happened in Russia, where they kept all the bad parts. They're famous for keeping the bad parts of Western civilization and throwing away the good parts, because somehow the rulers still like the bad parts better.
Yeah,
the garbage. But they kept the bad parts from Pushkin, not the bad parts, but they have the monument in the center, and they're proud that to him, dedicated to him in the center of Moscow. So it's the place where most of the protests against Putin's regime started, when they were allowed to be done officially. So Pushkin still remains, like, they go hand in hand, so to speak, culturally. They keep him as the banner. He was an interesting and strange fellow. And Pushkin, yes, in real life.
Yeah. Well, he was a romantic, like Byron. I mean, the same idea. Byron was a complicated character as well.
Yeah, with amazing productivity, and they kept all the Stalinist propaganda. They revived this propaganda. And I just, this morning, as I woke up, I usually look at what happened in the world, so I wouldn't miss a beat. And I see that, say, in the city of Tula, that is famous for arms manufacturing. They created very tiny tanks, but all the tracks and everything, but a young man can fit in there. And they have a few of them going along the streets of Tula and saying, to Berlin, to Berlin. And they produce it as a propaganda. Pretty idiotic, if you ask me.
Now,
like yesterday.
talking about to Berlin.
To Berlin, yeah,
but not Kyiv or anything. Berlin.
To Kyiv is still something that, you know, Russian soul can't accept wholly. I mean, most of the people are, I mean, a lot of people, Russia is made up of Ukrainians as well. Russian army, a lot of, I think we covered this some time ago, where they have a lot of Ukrainians serving in the military. It used to be like this. So you cannot say to Kyiv, you can go, let's go and conquer the Nazis. That's what they had to do, to denazification, demilitarization. That's the thing that they had to put on the front of this whole campaign. Because let's go.
Just a minute. They're Satanists now, aren't they? It's not Nazis, it's Satanists. No, but I am wondering, are they actually talking about Berlin? I can't believe this.
They're talking about Berlin since, I would say, 1214, because there's again this poetic thing that we had seen in the documentaries about World War II, when they were riding on the Katyusha rockets, when they were riding to Berlin. They still used, they took out the grads, the same multi-launchers from the Afghan war. That's what Russia is using now, along with everything else, whatever they can muster for this war. But this thing became, they had the May 9 parade, as usually they have in Russia, and they came with this two-color ribbon, which was like the guard sign identifier, whatever, the orange and black. And the Russians all over the world, they wore it in solidarity with what's happened in Russia, because they brought out the portraits of the grandfathers and fathers sometimes, and say that our grandfathers fought this war. And there was plenty of photos where they showed that all those photos, they ended up in the garbage bins after they exited the parade, because sometimes they were grandfathers for hire. Sometimes people there was something, you know, and they dress people with medals. They dress kids in prams with, you know, putting the uniform of World War II on them. Since then, that's where the real turn of the, you know, propaganda has started, where the tide has turned into a real, like, we wanted to recreate this, at least a little bit of this hardcore Stalinism. And now they go full blast at it, and that's what it is. And people, so judging from American TV, and I'm watching conservative TV mostly, and whatever is quoted from CNN and others, but people in the West still know very little about, and I keep repeating it, very little about this. It's more than Goebbels at this point. And it was well prepared.
I've seen some, you know, some videos of people. I did mention to you there was one called Inside Russia, a guy called Konstantin, and he's talking about the lies that are going on there. Apparently, within the past few days, there was somebody spoke about a new rule that anybody leaving Russia in a vehicle, in a car, had to register a place at the border ahead of time. And immediately the internet lit up, all the Russian internet. They were saying, you know, what's happening here? Is this the Iron Curtain dropping again, and all the rest of it? And it caused trouble in the main cities, Moscow, Petersburg. And those cities are more or less insulated from the effects of the war right now.
Yeah.
A lot of people in those cities, as you know, they hardly feel it. They just get the propaganda, that's all. And they were talking about this. So immediately the government said, no, we didn't mean cars. We meant transport lorries, you know, big articulated lorries.
Trucks, we call them.
Truck, yeah. So the thing is that they lied about what they'd said before, and it was a lie that you could easily find on the internet, because even when the government websites about the cars closed down, changed the page to have lorry instead of truck instead of car, you can find it on other sites that had mirrored the original ones, or even on, what do they call it, Time Machine or whatever it's called, when you can look at previous pages. So it's a lie that's very easily found out. But no shame at all. Just change the story. So that's back to very early Soviet days, isn't it? When they airbrushed people out of Stalin's photograph.
No, absolutely, and it's also it's a dream to bring back all those glory days.
Why are they doing that? It didn't help Russia the first time round. Why are they going back to that?
That's not the criteria that is deciding criteria, helped or not. We like it this way, and what else do we have? It's interesting, and I apologize for the subject, but it's like worshipping the human excrements in Russia, because the scientists, and the Russians are very scientific people. Recently, Dr. Fauci overcame this moment, because Americans were not very scientific en masse. We like inspiration more than.
They didn't invent Lysenko like the Russians did they? Yeah.
So it's complicated, as they say, right? So when Mao Zedong first came to see Stalin, they kept him in a hotel and for a long time, and they didn't let him meet Stalin. He did whatever he wanted. He brought his harem with him, but he was very, very worried about the meeting. So will he get enough support from Stalin, etc., etc.? And so it's like a legend. It's like a fact. And what they wanted to get enough excrement samples. They have a special container collector
from him
installed in the toilet. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And they analyzed it, the change, because they believed a certain level of certain chemicals resulting from the tests would show that he's ready, that he's fearful enough, that he's worried enough to enter the negotiation.
I see. They were trying to make him nervous, so that okay.
Yeah. So that was the worshipping of the excrements for science. And now they say that Putin is traveling wherever he travels, not that far. But wherever he goes, there's a man who comes, and when Putin wants to go number 2 or number 1, it's all collected in a briefcase.
Really?
So nobody gets access to
gets access to it.
To any little shiny bit.
I'm going to change the subject slightly, but while we're on the subject of excrement, I remember hearing from a spy who was working in East Germany, or in Berlin, and a British spy. And what was his main job? It was, just a minute, was it in Berlin or just outside the embassies? Anyway, his job was to collect the newspaper that the people who were in that embassy were using to wipe their bottoms with. Because they didn't have toilet paper, so they used old official documents. And so they'd collect these documents and wash them, or in some way, and get the information off them.
You see, for this, you have to graduate from the academy.
Yeah, that's what being a spy is all about. James Bond,
Yeah. So we made it pretty fast from highest poetry to
shit.
To where we are right now. Yeah.
The title of this video could be something like shit poetry.
No.
Well, look, so do you want to talk about poetry, or do you want to talk about what do you want to talk about?
since we're on the matter of papers, there's a lot of secret documents discovered recently.
In Biden's garage.
I don't know if you're interested to talk about it. I'm good to talk about poetry, but you pick. Ladies
no,
first.
Well, it's all right. Look,
are you interested at all in what's going on in the States? Are you laughing?
Of course, I'm very interested because, of course, America is leading the world at the moment.
And God knows what.
We can ignore it while we're dealing with our own local issues, but the world is being directed. Now, as for Biden, look, okay, start again. So the Ukraine issue would not be as it is if America were not as it is at the moment. That is, if it didn't have the resources and if it doesn't have this government. The fact is, I think that Trump would not have involved himself. He would have let Ukraine go down, I think. I don't know. That's just my opinion based on his idea that America stays out of wars. Biden, however, he has a debt to pay, which I'm quite sure that the Ukrainian government have a lot on him. And this might have encouraged him to be a little more friendly to Ukraine than it is. On the other hand, you can do the right thing for the wrong reasons. And I'm not saying that this is bad. I mean, I'm not saying that Ukraine should not have been helped. I'm with Boris Johnson on that one, you know. Yeah. So there is my example of how important I think America is in this situation. So, yeah, let's talk about it.
No, absolutely. And yesterday's my stream was dedicated to that, but it was based on the news. And here's your Scottish connection. I assume is McGonegall Scottish name?
McGonegall. Oh, you want to talk about bad poetry?
No, I want to talk about the FBI guy who got arrested.
Hang on. So I will just because I'm bringing poetry into this.
Yeah, because public is asking for poetry. I see that
there is a chap called McGonegall.
All right.
And he is known as the worst poet in the English language. It's the 19th century.
Didn't know that.
No. This is amazing. He wrote a poem. I mean, he wrote several. But the one that I remember is called The Tay Bridge Disaster. And it's about a terrible tragedy when the train going over the Tay Bridge, the bridge collapsed and people were killed. And hang on a minute, just a minute. I'm on another page. I haven't knocked something off, have I? Tay Bridge Disaster, McGonegall. Because there's this marvelous line at the Tay Bridge Disaster by William McGonegall, it says here. And there's this, just a minute. Fine. My goodness. Oh, well, I'm not going to waste your time here. But what happens is he talks about the bridge going down and this terrible sound. And then he has the people in the town next to the bridge. They hear the noise and they say, and he says, they all said with one voice, my goodness, the bridge has fallen down. And this is a terrible disaster with hundreds dead, you know. Anyway, so, yeah, when I hear the name McGonegall, I will always think of this dreadful poem, The Tay Bridge Disaster, which I do recommend that you read for a good laugh. And he thought he was marvelous. Do you know there's a woman in America, she used to hire, very rich, she hired the Carnegie Hall to sing. And she had a really awful voice. And people went just to hear that awful voice. I mean, it was terrible. Well, McGonagall was that sort of person. He'd turn up at theatres and everybody would crowd in because the poetry was so diabolically bad. They just had to hear it. Anyway, yeah, go now. Let's get back to McGonagall.
Let me show you my McGonagall.
Okay, you please do.
Charles McGonegall was arrested. He was a high-profile FBI official. Arrested, yes. He was investigated for quite a while, but he was taking money from Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska. And at first they said to help him fight another Russian oligarch. The sums we're talking about that are known is under $500,000 cash that he received some on several occasions. Summarily, it's under that. Probably much less than that, but the amount he was given was like 60 grand or 80 grand. In today's America, I mean, for some people it's like 2 years salary. For many people, but you cannot buy much. You know, you can buy a car with this money, but you cannot buy a house in most of the United States at this point. So it's not something that you would turn your life upside down for.
It's still a lot of money.
No, of course, and this, the very fact that he was part of this, and he was also part of what they tried to do in Albania. Because in Albania,
tell me about Albania. I don't know about this.
Albania is the country formerly. Yeah. So what happened in Albania was that there was a current president, and there was some contender for this position with ties to the West. So this McGonegall, my McGonegall, he traveled to Serbia and from there by car to Kosovo. He flew out there and he went there to meet with them, and he facilitated a lot of Chinese interests along the way too. And those Chinese interests, they also coincide with the name of the company that was trying to set foot in there was CEFC, same company Hunter Biden was having deals with. And the name Charlie mentioned along with the surnames in the exchanges, if you know those famous exchanges between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, two FBI high-profile again. Characters who had an affair, and the conversation was. I haven't heard any sexual connotations in published parts, but mostly was about will Trump become president?
Yeah, don't worry, we'll fix it. Type of
conversation. We have an insurance for this. That was said. And this McGonegall, Charlie, they called him. We have Charlie for this. We have Charlie for that. That kind of talk. So he was part of this Russia scam. He was a connection of the Fusion GPS and we wanted to everything to look like John le Carré, novel. That we want to have it so our brain, we are regular people. We're not trained for, plotting and ruining other people's lives in the most sophisticated manner. I mean, I'm sure they teach it someplace, but some people have natural predilection for this, of course. But they got this guy, and the internet, the radio, the TV is a buzz. I mean, of course, the conservatives, along with the secret papers discovered, the classified documents discovered in 5 locations at this point. Hopefully today there will be next location where they will discover secrets, classified documents. But yesterday also the Mike Pence threw his hat into the ring and said, I also have, I can be president one day. I also have classified documents. I discovered it. We conducted the search. It was a sealed box. And so he's also now in the mix. And what would be the next thing? They would go to all the presidents, past presidents, and ask them politely to conduct a search or trust somebody.
But just a minute. The thing I understand that makes it worse for Biden is that these documents, or at least most of them, were assembled while he was vice president.
Yes, some of them are.
And as president, you could just declassify anything. So they may have been, but they aren't after you've declassified them. But a vice president doesn't have that power, does he?
He doesn't have this power. And yesterday after the program, someone sent me some rules from the government documents, some codes, and I read it, and it's still unclear because basically all of them say that declassification could be done either by most of the declassification is performed by those who classified it. So you don't have to be someone who's like a president, or but if you put the classified stamp on it, you're the one who has your signature, so you can declassify it. They say that the president can declassify everything. Doesn't say so, but it comes from he's the main official of the land, right? Elected, etc. They say that vice president is not mentioned in there. President is not mentioned in this document. Maybe there is they say I have to believe people like Alan Dershowitz, who speaks on TV, the leading lawyer here on the First Amendment, etc. And he says it's not clearly written anywhere that the order of declassification, but it turns out there is a code, and the rule of thumb is if you classified it, you can declassify it. So it's like a gray territory, but the thing is that every president has.
What's the thing about it then? What's the big thing?
The big thing is what's inside that. What is it about? Is it coincidental? In case of Donald Trump, it was done in a very particular way. When they got a warrant to search his residences, they went there. They got the stuff out of the closet. Someone signaled that there is, and it was some inside job for this. So they got in. Pretty quickly, they located. Trump lives very different from public perception life as a private citizen. People who know him, they say he is usually sitting surrounded by papers. He doesn't read anything online. He wants everything printed out to him. Considering even when it comes to his business or whatever, he needs to have a paper in his hand. So he reads newspapers, he watches TV, he kind of lets it brew in his mind and acts accordingly. So they got in, they took out this classified information, as they said. There were some covers, and it's interesting that there is a regular folder, and there is a paper clip, and there is a printed sheet that says classified information, TCI. And then they clip it on. It's not something you don't know what's inside. So everybody saw those. Everybody who's interested, they saw those pictures of those folders, classified this, classified that, strewn on over the carpet in the room. Let's call it this way, right? So who put it there? Not Donald Trump, not the cleaner who came to clean this place.
Oh, I see what you mean.
It's a managed. It's not the photo. This is the box. The minimum of editing is what's required. It's the opposite of art, opposite of poetry. No poetry, no papers, no like Hitler's bunker impression. It should be all as you find it. That's the problem with January 6th committee as well. Very craftily edited. Only now, when we have Republican Congress, they started saying how many cops hurt each other, how many friendly fire was there.
I know, as I understand it, the people who were demonstrating, there wasn't one single person there who was armed.
Yeah, there was one guy with a knife. I don't know, he was inside the Capitol or outside. I mean, there may be somebody that they have missed, but the fact of the matter is that no shots were fired. But
except for the policeman who shot through
I apologize. Yes, one shot that was supposed to shock the country, but somehow people are.
Can you tell me now? I have seen online. So the people who go for the Democrats, they're saying this is. Apparently, they're saying this is the worst thing that happened since the Civil War. And then the people who are more sympathetic to Donald Trump are saying it wasn't anything very much, but a demo that got a little bit out of hand. So is that story still persisting, that CNN side story, or is it starting to fragment a little bit in the general population?
They hired the guy. I forgot his name on air. It was very shameful. And I was reminded immediately by the viewers, and I forgot his name again. Kinzinger. Right. Wow.
Yeah. Sorry. Burns night. Cheers. Yeah. Carry on.
Coffee. I won't lie to anybody. So
yeah,
Adam Kinzinger, the guy who he got hired by CNN or MSNBC, one of those outlets, as a contributor. Mm-hmm. So he will be continuing to be the face to remind everybody and about January 6th. Mm-hmm. So this theme is not going away. And they will try to make the most of it, just to squeeze every drop of it.
So how is that going in regard to the Biden papers then?
Biden papers are about different story. Biden is, the kind of the secret to what happened, if there is any secret for January 6th. It's in the tapes that were tapes. We'll call them tapes. They're, of course, the files. Mm-hmm. The CCTV, the footage that was taken during those days, and what actually happened, and what was the kind of word in the street, and how it all proceeded, who opened the doors. It's very naive to say that Capitol building was not ready. There was no scenario for a moment if somebody comes uninvited. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are powerful magnetic locks. Yeah. Those locks were opened. Basically, almost everything someone would like to know about this is said in a documentary that is called 25 Minutes, I believe, on BitChute. It's very well made. Very, it's a documentary, but it's really, people really paid attention to it. And if you look for J6 on BitChute, you can see a lot of kind of folk art, let's call it this way, where people put together footage they found. Some of it they shot themselves being there. So they explained it. And there was one little thing that you can call incessantly about this. It's one of the pages that will be eventually researched on the level of, I hate to say it, the assassination of JFK, because we have new things coming out after 60 years after it happened. But there's a lot of information because of different era, and it's if we have very few, say, filmed instances from 1963. This time we have it in droves. We have so much of this whole stuff, and 14,000 hours about to be released by this new Congress, and they will be reviewed. And I would say, if those people are serious, the people we elected to Congress this time, they would kind of squeeze every drop out of this footage as well, because there's a lot to talk about. But speaking of Biden's papers, they said that the stuff there is about the UK, it's about Ukraine, and it's about China. Not a word about Russia. But how UK is mentioned, we don't know.
I'd be interested to know that.
Yeah, I can give you a taste of it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that.
There's a wonderful, I think she's Australian, Miranda Devine, who's in possession. He wrote a book, A Laptop from Hell, and she went through Hunter Biden's laptop, the one that he brought to repair and abandoned it there.
Mm-hmm.
So in one of the emails, he emails to his partner Archer, pretty lengthy and very differently worded text message or email or text message. I don't know, some electronic missive. And it's lifted. The experts think that it's lifted from some top secret documents.
Just a minute.
Yes.
A top secret document from whom?
From some FBI report, obviously. It's written like an FBI report, not like regular Hunter Biden writing on business or whatever. He didn't write too much, but it's very lengthy. And it's from the period when Russia took over Crimea. And one of the paragraphs there mentions the fact that the strategic bridge that Russia is about to build over the Azov Sea would impede British interests in terms of oil exploration.
In the Azov Sea?
Somewhere in the area.
Well, what interest, do you know, what interest does Britain have in the Azov Sea?
That's MI6...
I'm going to look that one
question
up.
Yeah, but you look at the comments of this thing, and I would Dan Bongino, one of the more popular, more substantial speakers on in American conservative media, had an excellent fiery report on all those things. And who mentioned it on TV as well? I cannot remember right now, but there is something that is talking about being an obstacle, American activities being an obstacle to British interests in Crimea. So that was part, and now
I'm flabbergasted. I had no idea that Britain had any interests in that part of the world anymore. I really would like to.
Interest, not in terms of business, because they were business. Remember, the Hunter Biden was getting $80,000 a month salary from oil and gas company.
Yeah.
So this company was most probably it was trying to become a go-between for big oil companies of the world, to work with Shell, to work with BP. Who knows what's going on there? But
indeed.
Interesting part is that to compare, if the secret documents discovered in Biden's multiple locations
I see.
Text, just to compare and contrast, to see if where did he get it from? Did he get it from Charlie? Or did he get it from those documents that they were stashed in the garage by this now very famous Corvette? So that's the thing. But the world is laughing at Americans, and that's
no. Well, I don't know. Not from my point of view. So far as I've seen from the BBC, it did report the Trump document thing, but it's not reporting the Biden document thing so much, obviously. So I don't think people are laughing so much. I'm sure the Americans, especially people like you, who are very well informed in that area. But
let me ask you this. Ordinary Russians, I see a lot of footage shot in Russia on the phones, and everybody knows how to make a video these days. They worried about Europe, that you are cold, you have nothing to eat.
That's what
and that's how things are. Are you really uncomfortable in the UK? I know prices, like everywhere, they went up for all this, for everything basically.
Oil prices went up, and I had a diesel car, and that really went up last year. It's back down now, and no more cold than usual. And the British, you can never rely on the British when it comes to cold. Because I keep telling people, we are further north than Hudson's Bay. in London, and that's in the south. Most of Britain is much further north than Hudson's Bay. And it's always a big surprise when it snows. It's like, oh my God, what's that white stuff coming out the sky? Never seen it before. The British are like that. So if they complain about being cold, I wouldn't take that without a large glass full of salt. So no, there's a cost. People are talking about a cost of living crisis, but I am not so sure that that isn't just one of those media storms that's being whipped up because the BBC doesn't like the Conservative Party. No. And I don't see that the situation is any worse here than it would have been if there hadn't been a war. I'm quite sure there are price changes, but you get used to those. The Russians can just use their imagination in more constructive ways, I think. Yeah, that's my view of it. I mean, I have no problems here. But then, okay, I have to admit, we're comfortably off. We're not living on the edge. And I'm quite sure that there are people who were living just above the edge who are now slightly below the edge. But that's not only because of the war, of course. You have to remember that Britain makes a lot of materiel of its own. And if they're sending stuff over to Ukraine, that means there are more people somewhere along the line being employed in making more materiel. So I don't know whether that balances things out.
Yeah, it's interesting how in Ukraine, the mass media, they worship Biden administration. It seems like.
Well, they're doing all right. The Biden administration, they're not as quick off the mark as perhaps they could be. But then I can understand the cautiousness. I'm not railing against that. And the rest of Europe, I think it's absolutely amazing. I'm quite sure that when Putin did his sums about the war, he thought, well, the European Union is going to fold because it's full of flabby Germans, or whatever he thought of them, if they're talking about going to Germany. And the British, they've got their own problems, and America is being run by a senile old idiot. So, this is going to be a cakewalk. And what he didn't realize was that Britain was, I'm proud to say, the first to stand up, and then the rest of Europe couldn't let Britain beat it. So now they're standing up, and America is standing up as well. And I think this is good. I mean, the deaths, the horror, the destruction, that's not good. But it's good.
It's good to win.
Well, of course it's good. It has to be won. It absolutely, like the Finnish Prime Minister said, it absolutely is a war that has to be won. Do you remember the Falklands War?
Sure.
So when the Argentinians went into the Falklands, they thought the British were going to just fold. There was going to be a couple of resolutions in the UN, naughty boy, and that would have been the end of it. And they were horrified when suddenly the British sort of got their act together and went over and knocked the crap out of them. And that actually destroyed the Argentinian junta, didn't it? It destroyed their anti-democratic fascist government, that battle.
Yeah.
And there were lots of people here saying, I had an American friend saying, this is how world wars start and all that. And he's right. But he was wrong. And it was that changed the perception of Russia. It changed the government of Russia because they saw there was still some backbone in the West. And I think that this is a more horrible example. It's the same thing, though, writ large. That's how I feel about it.
No, absolutely, and you cannot stop this evil without defeating it. It's an illusion. If you think that there could be a little bit of evil, or you don't have to fight evil, and it will somehow extinguish itself by the course of events that happen in this world, we see that evil has still its attractiveness. To some people, and here we are to conquer it with poetry and good cheer.
No, but you must not discount the poetry. And again, I'm going to go back to the cultural expectations of the people. People don't fight when they have different stories. The reason Iraq could, despite it had a lot of weaponry, even if it didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They could have fought the Americans off. The Americans were at a great distance from home, long lines of communication, all the rest of it. But they just folded. And they folded because Iraq was not a country, but a series of tribes, each with their own loyalties. And Saddam Hussein could not rely on the whole country coming together behind him, only his tribe. And the rest were just co-opted. And when you're just co-opted, what are you fighting for? What's the point? Now, you get people together with a national story. And those national stories are stories, poems, songs, legends, national heroes. And when you don't get those all together, you don't get a country that's worth fighting for. So yes, if the Russians are going to all get behind Pushkin, if every one of them can go into battle quoting
to Berlin,
or whatever.
That's the idea.
That is their national story. And I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that's how everybody works together. Yeah. And so, yes, poems. Everybody should know poems and songs from their own nation. They should all know them, even if they come from different cultures and have their own little, side stories as well. Like you've got Pushkin. Not the average Russian doesn't have. The average American doesn't have Pushkin, I suspect. So that's your side story. But you've taken on the American story as well.
No, of course, we're looking for the story, and the stories are made every day. And of course, for many people, our much criticized, our Constitution is the story. Because not everybody, people agree to disagree. Some people can't stand poetry. They cannot learn, poetry by heart. But that is something we agree upon, and it's pretty remarkable document from every standpoint. And I'm not just being kind of, getting on my high horse. That's your job. but that's where that keeps people united and understanding. And of course the glory of capitalism is another thing, that because people come here not basically to worship the flag. Most of us we come to make our lives better, to escape the tyrannies of all kinds, wherever we were born. If there's a place like this, like America, so we try to get here and rebuild ourselves, and a lot of people succeed with that. So the facts, people vote with their feet, not with their brain or heart or anything. Most of us.
They do vote with their hearts. They do.
Now is the time to vote with the hearts. Once you hear, I'm talking about because again, it's a theme in Russia that America is somehow illegitimate and evil. Or
they've always been saying that.
Yeah.
And Russia has the job to change, to make the world better. That's the Russian the purpose in history, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Demi. To poetry.
To poetry. And national songs. Yes. And Rabbi Burns. Would that some power, the gift he gives, to see ourselves as others see us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Right, don't forget McGonegall.
Sure will. I will be reminded once I turn the TV on.
It's the worst poetry in the English language. It's just great.
All right, guys, if you feel like you don't have enough English to watch it, please turn on the subtitles when you review it. YouTube is very equipped to do so, and there is even a tutorial that I did how to translate it all in any language, almost any language that Google mastered to please us all. So you go to settings and you choose subtitles, and among the subtitles, там, где есть субтитры, вы выбираете русский язык, нажимаете маленькое колесико внизу экрана, и вы можете смотреть это все на русском языке. Конечно, под конец видео, это надо было сказать все в начале. How I should have said it in the very beginning, but I was eager to
I have no idea.
Gain the speed. Saying. No, I'm saying that there's a subtitle. Anyway? Subtitles. You can subtitle it all and translate it into Russian. Like 70% would be understood of what we're talking about, but 30% for this you have to learn English.
Yes.
All right, Demi. Pleasure again, and see you sometime soon.
Okay, it was lovely talking. Bye, Yura.
Bye-bye.